Welcome back to the Results Operations Centre here in Pretoria. Good evening to you. I'm Stephen Critters. Plenty to come on the SABC News channel. As I promised, we will try and get hold of the attorney, Hans-Yuri Moelman. Looks like we've had some progress in that, representing the people involved in that legal bid. There's likely to be a flurry of legal documents between now and 11 o'clock tomorrow after that deadline was set. More on that, of course, on sabcnews.com. Let's, for a moment, take a look at one of the important aspects of this election. It's something that you see in many countries where, when you have an election, observers from other countries come and watch the election. They're usually called international observers, and it is, I suppose, the idea of having an outsider, someone else who is not politically invested in a process, coming to watch an election process play out and then pronounce on whether it was free and fair. Someone who's played a big role and watched these missions for many, many years is the editor of our foreign desk editor here at the SABC, Sophie Mokoena. Sophie, good evening.
Good evening, Steve.
All right, we've had an international observer mission here. I know you've been speaking to them, you've been interviewing them. Where have they been? I mean, it's not a large group of people, and there's a big country to kind of cover with a situation like this.
Well, the problem is people think South Africa's democracy has matured, and they think South Africa is a country that is sophisticated. You don't have to be there and kind of monitor what they are doing, because most of these observer missions, they think that we will be able to do things right, particularly based on the track record of the Electoral Commission. But I think it is the responsibility of such organizations to ensure that they are always available where there are elections, to ensure that they are the eyes and the ears of the international community, but also the eyes and the ears for the South Africans, particularly to ensure that elections are free, fair and credible.
Obviously, there are lots of things to look at. I mean, when you're an election observer mission, you need to see the voting, you need to see the tabulation, you need to see the counting, you need to see the results announcement. You also need to check the kind of temperature on the ground.
Yes, you do that. Actually, you send a technical team in advance to come and interact with different stakeholders. That will be your political parties, church organizations, NGOs, the Electoral Commission, to check whether they've started in terms of preparations. Then you have another crew that comes much later, particularly during the time where there are campaigns, to ensure that the campaigning is free and fair. And then you have the last group that often come towards voting, where they will look at the final campaigning and the voting process. When they leave, they are supposed to leave a small technical team to look at issues that are likely to come up. For an example, in this case in South Africa, now you have this incident for the first time. But if you look at the continent in general, I was in Zambia at some point in time where a similar incident happened, where Heshelema Hakainde was not happy about the process, and he went to the election center and he took over the election center, and there was a press conference. And sometimes you can influence the nation. People can take to the streets. You might have serious incidents. I was in Kenya, Raila Odinga, when he was not happy, there was a very, very heated press conference. Even journalists were even scared. And then recently, when was it, in Zimbabwe, you would recall that at night, while the Electoral Commission there was busy announcing results, the opposition MDC representatives, they went to the election center or the results center, and there was a media briefing. So South Africa has done it for the first time. Therefore, I think it is very important for international community to always remember that South Africa is not immune to anything that can happen in the world. Therefore, don't say South Africa, it's a mature democracy, you're not going to go there. For example, where's the European Union? Where is the Commonwealth? You only have SADC, you have the African Union, you have ASA and other smaller organizations. But where is the European Union? Where is the Commonwealth?
The person in charge of the commission, of the observers mission here, is a former Nigerian president, Goodluck Jonathan. I mean, he's a heavy hitter. What do you make of that?
Well, indeed, the AU, they always go for former presidents to lead those missions. And he was here. One thing that he raised was to try and cool the temperatures, because I did a follow-up question after the press conference to say, you kind of issue a warning to South Africans that we must ensure that there's peace. Are you sensing something? He was a bit evasive, but you could see that he was trying to manage the situation. And then the second issue he raised was that perhaps it's time that as a continent we modernize, we have a new technology. Let's take a listen at this soundbite where he's talking about how we can improve the electoral processes on the continent.
Based on its findings, the ESA-EOM offers the following preliminary recommendations that will be expanded in the final report. 1. Reconsider the timing of legal reforms and enactment of new laws within the electoral cycle to ensure that laws can be operationalized well ahead of elections. 2. To address the concerns of multiple voting, consider creating a harmonized digital voter register to ensure that the scanner machines can be used to track persons who have already cast their ballots and serve the purpose of double check alongside the hard copy register. 3. Put in place adequate mechanisms for management of substations to ensure that the number of voters per voting point is easily manageable. This will quicken the process and reduce voters' waiting time and also shorten the time used in counting the ballots.
The chair of the Election Observers Mission here in South Africa, that's former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan. Sophie, I know that you have been speaking to the observers. Have they given you any hint of what their findings will be? I imagine they're pretty happy.
They are pretty happy, but also there are lessons to be learned in terms of the continent. For example, the issue of special votes. When you look at Kenya, you have these elderly people who in the hospitals have to go to the polling station. It's just embarrassing. And in South Africa, you have a different case, but also allowing your citizens abroad to cast their ballot. Yes, some countries are already doing it during the elections in Kenya. At the embassy here, at the High Commissioner, Kenyans were able to vote, but other countries, they're still lagging behind. And I think we really have to improve as a continent. We cannot be a dark continent. We can't continue to be a dark continent. At a time where we have a better position to position ourselves as an alternative force, looking at the current tension between US and China. We are, a go-to in terms of market. Therefore, let's create that environment that says we are ready.
Sophie Mokoena, the foreign editor of the SABC, thank you very much indeed. All right, let's go back to Johannesburg. Sophie Mokoena.